Well, good morning there, good people. Jason here at Green Country Agroforestry. In the midst of our gardening chores for the day. Making some mulch. Well, I wasn't expecting to get rain, but we got rain. And that means I've got to expedite the work here on the retaining wall. Let me show you what I mean. You see, we've reached this point here. And the plan is to expand the walkway to 3 tiles wide. And then we're going to bring the retaining wall up this side. And it's going to meet up there at the porch area. But I'm going to do some work here on the walkway because whenever I first put it in, I was just concerned with getting a hardscaped walkway up to the porch and over to the patio area where we now of course have the grape arbor. But the garden cart that we use needs a little bit more space to operate in. So what I've done for all the regular walkways is expand them to 36 inches. And 36 inches is just enough. 30 inches is not quite enough. Alright, now let's have a look from the other side. And it's hard to tell from this angle, but this walkway has a bit of a slope as it comes up towards the porch area. And what I'm going to do is convert that steady slope into a single step, and that's going to be probably right about there where the where that corner is now. You see where the little block wall corner is now. We'll put the step in right about there, and I'm going to have to remove all this material so that we can have that even block wall come up and meet the porch. So that is today's challenge. So here we are. You can see where we're at here. This spot here is gonna, this spot here is gonna become our step. But of course I need to dig this part out here. But this is our progress so far. Not bad. So, in a previous video we discussed what is a garden. Today I think we should discuss what is a gardener. Now, if a garden is defined by boundaries, then it would follow reasoning that a gardener must be one that works at or is involved in the maintenance and the creation of boundaries. That's fundamental to the function and nature of a gardener. I'm going to hearken back once more to old literature and the story of Sargon the Great that begins, Sargon I, King I. My mother was a temple worker. My father I knew not. We can infer, most likely, that the mother in question was one of those temple workers that provided ecstatic services and are not intended to bear children. But she chose to bear this one. In secret she bore me, the story continues, and placed me within a basket of reeds lined with pitch. And placed me upon the Euphrates. The waters rose up about me. But I was unharmed. They bore me to the home of Aki, the water master, or the well dipper, depending upon your context or understanding. Who taught me the ways of being a gardener. The story goes on to say, that Sargon has conquered the mountains, the high places, has traversed the low places, encircled the sea lands, and captured Dilmun. It goes on to say that any that would follow after him should do as he has done. Conquer the high places, traverse the low, encircle the sea lands, and conquer Dilmun. Now, a lot of this has been speculated. What does it mean? What is it really about? I think the tale of Sargon is part of a larger body of work that has been lost to us for the most part as a complete body of work, but sort of remains in its echoes through literature and tradition. There are some that say Sargon was not a real person at all, and I'm somewhat inclined to believe that perhaps that's true, that the entire story is intended to be an opening into teaching young princes about kingship. And so, I suppose part of our definition for what is a gardener should also include a king in training. Because in the course of learning how to be an effective gardener, one must learn how to establish and maintain boundaries, how to value and care for even the small things, because the good gardener knows just by taking care of these small matters that the larger matters are also tended to. The good gardener does not attempt to accomplish all the tasks himself. He delegates responsibility. Here we have retention of the soil being carried out by these daylilies, and soil improvement being conducted by the daikon radish. Becoming a gardener means gaining an understanding of relationships and understanding what the needs of a variety of different organisms and even ecosystems require. these skills and this understanding is also the skill and understanding that a good ruler requires. But the very first and most important thing that one needs to know about rulership is that one cannot attempt to rule anything or anyone unless one has first mastered ruling oneself. Now, the first thing that any king or gardener needs to understand is that there is a distributed authority from which rulership comes. The kingship descends from, in this case, heaven. That's right, we're going to talk about God real quick. And we're going to use a very old alphabetic system. It's attributed to one of my ancestors. I am Jason Avers. Aver is the person that is said to have invented this writing system. So I'm not going to plagiarize or steal anything here. What is God? What is God? God is defined, we're going to use a definition for God through the writing system, and we're going to draw it with a character here, which is a line. This is a dividing line, dividing what is from what is not. With a hand above and a hand below. This character, kind of like an X, in the Hebrew is Aleph. The writing system is the Hebrew writing system. I'm not teaching you Judaism here. I'm teaching you, I'm showing you what the character is. This is Aleph, and the meaning of Aleph is master and teacher. Master and teacher. And why is it master and teacher? Well, because it divides what is from what is not. All right, that's Aleph. And then you need to know about Lamed. And Lamed looks a bit like, if we have, or Aleph looks a bit like an X here, which it does, but Aleph looks a bit like a shepherd's hook. And, sorry, we're getting a bunch of sand in the way. The meaning of Lamed is also, sorry, it has a little base here. It's also master and teacher. So Aleph is the master of masters and the teacher of teachers. You understand? Master of masters, teacher of teachers. This is the word that means God. And it's the first step in the hierarchy of distributed authority. Lamed means, of course, teacher and master, but it's different from Aleph. Aleph is master and teacher without any other exceptions. Lamed is teacher in the meaning of, as I teach, I learn. This is classical teaching. Right now, I am teaching, but I'm also in the process of learning, so I'm relating what I've learned to a greater audience, so I can expand the information. And of course, if I get something wrong, a person who also has information can correct me. This is all part of the teaching and learning process, but that's in Lamed, not in Aleph. So Aleph is superior to Lamed. There is a flow of hierarchy. Now, Lamed is also known as the sign of the King of Kings. So our ultimate teacher is the King of Kings. This is how we get our distributed authority. Now, whenever my ancestor was first coming up with this writing system, the Aleph didn't look the way it does now. Lamed didn't look the way it does now. The way it looks now, Lamed looks more like this stockman's cane, and it's used for guidance. And of course, that's the way teaching is. It's more of guidance than punishment. The old version was a fork with the tines out like a prod, a cattle prod, and so you were prodded along by the ultimate teacher in your lessons. And of course, the Aleph. I have to explain a little bit about cosmology here, and it would help if you have read through Plato's Republic and Symposium. But if you haven't, I'll sort of condense things. All right. In order for reality to exist, there has to be a contrast, two different viewpoints. This is and this isn't in the absolute of extremes. So we're dividing this from that. This is and this is not. A hand above, a hand below. This was represented, of course, in a different way at one time. It was represented with the bull's head. And it's actually the horns that are important, because as the horns come together, but they never quite touch. And they come together in very, very fine points as far as what something is or is not. And then they expand out fractally in either direction. And in either direction, they are complementary with each other. So a force that says, this is a thing, this is this way. And a force that counterbalances, saying, this is not that way, this is not a thing. And they remain in tension, in complement with each other. Our experiential reality is the resolution of that conflict. If that makes any sense, then grand. If it doesn't, ponder on it a while, but you have these two horn points coming together that suspend between the two horn points all of reality. And that was how Aleph was represented as the bull's head originally, as opposed to this idealistic expression of separating this from that. If that makes any sense. All right, moving on. Now, what's important to know about authority is that authority does not exist in a vacuum. It is dependent upon responsibility. Now, as one begins making decisions, which is really what authority is about, making decisions, in the garden setting, one begins to learn by experience what is a good idea and what is a bad idea. And it's a process. This is why it's best that one does one's learning in the garden at a young age, rather than in office at an old age, whenever lives hang in the balance. So, there we go. Remember, authority comes from responsibility, even if authority is assumed. Now, what ultimately winds up happening if one assumes authority without taking responsibility is that accountability, that is, the forced responsibility imposed upon you by nature, will happen, well, naturally. Because natural law exists with or without there being someone to point to it and say, look, it's there. So all I'm doing here is observing that there is such a thing as a natural order and a natural law, and an ultimate authority above everything that we're going to call God. And whether your conceptualization is God personified or God as an abstraction, it does not matter, because that is the final and ultimate authority, an arbiter of what is and is not, regardless of what anyone has to say about it, which is really what is the difference between law and rule. Rule is, of course, just these conventions that we all agree upon. Law is inexorable and unavoidable and inherent in nature. And if you're going to learn self-rule, you must know the difference between what is a rule and what is law. Law comes from the ultimate source. Rule is what we make in accommodation with it. Now, if the proper source of authority is responsibility, then it's important that one should know what the source of responsibility is. And that is ownership. Because if a person owns themselves, they will take responsibility for themselves. Otherwise, it becomes necessary for someone else to assume responsibility and therefore authority over them. And that crack just went straight on through, didn't it? Okay. I'm hoping I can get this to splinter without too much trouble. Now, whenever you see situations like we have in a lot of Western nations currently, where bureaucracy allows personal accountability and responsibility to be avoided. The authority is established, it has power, it's making choices, but it has no proper establishment because it's irresponsible. We want to create a change in civilization where the individual members of our society, by learning gardening, kingship, they learn individual responsibility, hence authority. By that way, our civilization becomes holistic. That means that every member of it embodies the whole. The law, such as it is, exists within every member. And the law is easy enough to understand because it's the same for all human beings if we think about it, because no one wants to be murdered or assaulted or robbed, and all people have a preference that when they enter into an agreement, that agreement is upheld by the opposition party. This is, by its very nature, the natural law of humanity. Ownership is not the only case in which authority is justified. Take, for example, the authority exercised by parents over their children. From whence does this authority derive? The parent doesn't own their child, surely. And yet, as we know, a child has not yet learned how to be responsible or accountable. Not entirely, not for their own selves. They may be certainly allowed certain freedoms in making choices, which is, of course, authority, because they are learning about authority and about responsibility and about making choices and about consequences. But because the parents are in the process of teaching, remember the Lamed, yes, that's the mortal teacher to the child. So the proper role of parent is to be teaching the child, Lamed here, how to be an adult, which means growing into their responsibility so they can be, or so they can possess, adult authority of their own. And I am just learning right now how to go about doing this particular work. You know, I'm not a professional stonemason or anything. I'm just a gardener in the process, as are we all, of learning. And hey, I'll tell you what, if you guys have been learning something today, I want you to do something for me. Could you? Kindly please, could you hit that like button? Could you subscribe to the channel? Could you absolutely please really share this video, because there's nothing I can really do at this point to cause the channel to grow on my own effort. You guys are going to have to start stepping up and sharing some videos. I know it's asking a lot, but please, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, just hit that link and share it to Twitter or Facebook or wherever you happen to be, and I promise I will keep on churning out more videos and hopefully providing you some value with the content. So with that, I think we're going to call today's video done. And good people, I will catch you next time. Until then, get out there, get growing.